the pieces that are in play there and making sure the analysts and IT are in sync and how important that is. When that's not important or when that doesn't happen, this term around shadow IT, because you talked about analysts actually running things on a schedule, but it's not production, which is an IP term, but it keeps the analysts away from actually solving new problems because they're spending time actually running or operating a business.
Hi, everyone. This is Brian Amline with Value Driven Analytics, here today with a special guest. I'm here with Gary Spakes of Ridge Trail Ventures. Thanks for joining me today, Gary.
Man, it's been a pleasure to do this series here with you, Brian. Around the analytic process and the analytics life cycle. I think where we left off last time was forecasting and those types of models that were there. But doing the data mining side and the forecasting side leaves me with a question, and it really is around to what end? Because, we talked about preparing data and exploring data and shaping data for analytics to build analytic models, but to what end? Taking those models and moving them into a production level environment. I've heard statistics that like 85 to 90% of analytic models never make it to a production state out there. And I know you're a practitioner of the analytics side of the house as well. And help me understand, is that term, that 80, 90% not making it into a production, is that really true? And then what does it really mean to be in production?
Right. Well, there's some use cases for building a model or building analysis where it doesn't need to be productionalized. And so it shouldn't be. It's just to get an insight, perhaps, for a particular problem, a big decision that needs to be made. And you're getting a data-driven recommendation, and then you don't expect that problem to happen again. And so you wouldn't necessarily need to productionalize it in that case. But it is also true that there's a lot of cases where something should be productionalized and it's not. It could be that problem does come up. Maybe it's every month for a business review or even more frequently in some cases. And instead, just by default, analysts and data scientists get used to running that thing manually. And it never gets really productionized in an automated way. And so I could see that 80, 85% stat being true. Again, some of that, maybe 15% where it doesn't get productionalized for a good reason, because it's just a one-off situation, one-off analysis, data science model that needs to be built, and that situation isn't going to come up again. But if you do expect it to come up on any kind of frequency, quarterly, monthly, or more frequent, it should be implemented. It's often not, and perhaps it's because we just don't take it to that next step of automation, and that's where the productionalization, I kind of think of automation, your analysis and productionalization.
Yeah. The phrase that I like to use is productize it.
Yeah.
Well, taking your analytics and turning it into a product that many people can use. And I think one of the best cases of that, there's three that come off the top of my head. We've talked about recommendation engines for because you watch this, you might like to watch that.
Yeah.
Or because you bought this, you might like to buy that. Maybe that's two of the three, even though they're the same things, recommendation engine. But you had mentioned on one of the last times, are we going to get a loan or not? Are you going to be approved or not? Those are things that you want to have in a production atmosphere.
That's right. Exactly. For types of things like that, you need to schedule it. You need to either schedule it or have it running in real time. So like the loan application, that's a real-time API that needs to be available whenever a credit application is submitted. Ideally, gone are the days, I think, where you submit a credit application and they said, we'll get you an answer by tomorrow or even next week.
We live in a microwave society. That's one you want it now.
Exactly. Now there's other use cases, perhaps like the coupon example, where one scenario, you run this model for customers you've seen in the past. That model is maybe updated every day. So when that customer comes in, you've got an answer, a prediction ready to go in that coupon. But another model, probably an even better model, is similar to the credit example, where it is real time. The cash register's scanning the items from this particular visit, and you want to use that information to come up with that prediction for your next visit right there on the spot. And it needs to calculate that very quickly. So that's a good real-time use case as well.
Yeah, and if you've missed those, go back to the data mining episode. and here you can hear more about the coupon example and those in that one. I'm sitting here thinking about this from my side of the house, from my expertise, which is data modeling. I'm a DBA by trade, and for the last umpteen years, I've helped build analytic systems from data to delivery. The architecture components that sit underneath this. You're the practitioner, but you got to have the compute power, and you've got to have the software, and you've got to be able to grab the data from the right data sources. Those are the things that I spend a lot of time on, that data and that analytics, that systems and enterprise architecture side.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about two things. One of them is the pieces that are in play there, and making sure that the analysts and IT are in sync, and how important that is.
Yeah.
And when that's not important, or when that doesn't happen, this term around shadow IT, because you talked about analysts actually running things on a schedule, but it's not production, which is an IT term, but it keeps the analysts away from actually solving new problems, because they're spending time actually running or operating a business. Am I hitting home on some of these for you?
Yeah, that's a big challenge, and you can see why this term shadow IT happens. We live in a microwave society, like you said, where people want things quickly, but it also processes, especially when they're implemented and productionalized, you want them to be able to be created. We need it now. We need this model now. And so as a result, if you don't have an agile process for both your analytics and your IT team, the analytics team might take things into their own hands and say, yeah, we're going to create this data set. We're going to productionalize it using our own tools and techniques, and leave IT out of it, right? Because they want to satisfy the stakeholder demands.
You've been in the analytics side of the house for some pretty large organizations.
Yeah.
Did you have, hearing what you're talking about there, are you telling me that IT is a blocker for you and being able to be creative or solve problems fast?
Well, it can be. It depends on the IT group. It does. You want this collaborative team where the IT team and the analytics team are meeting together on a regular basis. I would say that partnership is important. Probably need to be meeting on a weekly basis to stay in tune with each other's.
Because how many things that are coming up that are important, or in your data shaping, or bringing in data from other sources that may not necessarily be approved.
Right.
In your data preparation side of the house, before you even get to the point of trying to put a model into production.
Yeah. You want your IT team, if you have a business intelligence team that is responsible for creating these data tables, you'd love for them to be involved in that. I think a good middle ground is when the IT team is involved and they create an analytics playground for you, especially for your MVP models. So you might implement models in a certain way if they need to be delivered right away, but then eventually take them to another productionalized state. So it can still be automated in this analyst playground, but then eventually long-term, it gets moved to a real productionalized system that has maybe more of a robust process, more error checking and all of that around it.
Yeah, so the MVP isn't necessarily like the most valuable player. It's really the minimal viable product. For those that missed some of the earlier episodes, where we're talking about having a complete thought in your process, not making sure that the product that you have is really solving a problem and not just part of a problem, and looking at that process to build that and making sure that you've got that complete thought.
Absolutely, a complete thought, exactly.
And that comes down to, do you have a good pipeline or a good process to take an analytic insight that's been created and put it into a production space? Otherwise, you are going to generate, or you're going to proliferate that shadow IT side of it.
Shadow IT, and perhaps it even comes back to that not being productionalized at all. It comes down to having a good process around all of this. usually you're not just creating one model, but you're creating models for many use cases. You need to have a good model management system in place, a model production system, a model management that is consistent, so that when you create a model for product recommendations or a time series model forecasting something, there's a whole process around it. It's vetted. You've aligned on that process with IT, with your analyst, and it's just plug and play. It's just a different model each time.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about model management side of the house. I think we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next episode, where we're talking about monitoring models, because organizations today spend so much time talking about data and data governance, but they don't spend time talking about analytic governance. And that's an important piece as well.
It is so important. Absolutely. You're just going to end up with a mess if you don't think about that strategically.
Yeah. So in summary, what we're talking about in taking a model and putting it into production is to make sure that we've got a good relationship between the analyst community and the IT community, and they're meeting regularly. They've developed a process to productionalize, productize, these analytic models. And if that's not the case, then you're going to get the shadow IT. But these models don't necessarily have to always go to production per se, but they do, but they don't, but they do, but they don't. If they're going to be repeatable, they've got to have some form of rigor that's associated with a production side. And the repeatable may be a monthly process or a quarterly process. That's for something, or even a yearly process that goes along for these analytic models when you're talking about some of the seasonality bits that we've talked about as well.
Yeah, exactly. The cadence of the refresh, of that automated refresh, you don't need to be real time if it doesn't need to be real time. In some cases, if it's for a monthly business review, you need to schedule that thing monthly, and that's it. And it may not, maybe there's value in scheduling on a weekly or daily basis. That's sometimes the value of automation, is you can refresh things quicker and learn about insights quicker. But in some cases, it's just not necessary. And so you don't need to take something to a level that doesn't need to be, right? You're just adding complexity.
Yeah, and don't talk to me about real time, because I believe there's no such thing as real time. But that's another topic that we could talk about later on. Hey, my name is Gary Spakes from Ridge Trail Ventures. It's been a pleasure to be on your channel here again to talk about taking analytic models and moving them into production, and some of the issues that are involved there, the big one between IT and your analyst community.
Wow, such an important topic. Thank you for sharing today, Gary, and asking some great questions. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Consider Ridge Trail for your analytics needs. I'm looking forward to partnering with you, Gary. And thanks again for watching today. Consider liking the video if you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing if you want to see more interviews between me and Gary, and analytics trainings for all of you practitioners out there. And don't forget to leave a comment if you have questions for Gary or I. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.